faithfully delivering value and interpreting the world's best books for you. Hi, this is Sally here with the Book Talk. Today we're diving into the book Harvard History of China, Volume 4, The Age of Confucian Rule. The author of Song's Transformation is Dieter Kuhn, a renowned German sinologist and professor at Würzburg University. 88 is a lifelong author. For many, the Song Dynasty is remembered for two extremes, being incredibly weak and incredibly prosperous. When we talk about extreme weakness, it's about how the Song Dynasty handled expanding its territory and dealing with other nations. Even at its height, the Song Dynasty covered just 2.8 million square kilometers. Compared to the Tang Dynasty before it or the Yuan, Ming, and Qing after, it just didn't stack up. Actually, the Song Dynasty wasn't fully unified. It faced constant challenges from the Liao, Jin, and Western Xia in the north, and Dali in the southwest.
Plus, under treaties, the Southern Song Emperor had to address the Jin Emperor as uncle to show difference, but in real battles, they were even less capable.
Fighting the Khittans, Western Xia, Jurchens, or Mongols, the Song army wasn't confident against any of them, so they paid tribute for peace. So, history remembers the Song dynasty as impoverished and weak. But on the flip side, in some ways, the Song dynasty was super prosperous, almost like a modern country. Take ancient China. It was mostly agricultural, so revenue came from land taxes. The Song dynasty, though, was different. Its market economy was booming. Take a look at the Qingming scroll. It shows the Bian River filled with merchant ships, streets lined with shops, crowds everywhere. The Enjing, the Song capital, was basically one big market, and this thriving economy brought in huge taxes for the government. In the northern Song, 25% of tax revenue was from business taxes. In the southern Song, overseas trade was huge, and the whole economy depended on trade. This was pretty much unique in ancient Chinese history.
The Song Dynasty folks invented the first paper money called jiaozi and set up rules for how it worked.
The government had a monopoly on issuing jiaozi, with reserves needed beforehand, and it had an expiration date. Jiaozi was used all over in the Song economy. The government even bought military supplies with it. Sounds modern, doesn't it? And on one side, poor and weak, on the other, surprisingly modern. Naturally, people wonder, how did the Song dynasty end up so unique? And what impact did it have on China's history? The book we're covering today, The Age of Confucian Rule, Song's Transformation, gives us the key to understanding what made the Song dynasty so special. I'll cover 3 parts. First, the challenges the Song dynasty faced and the price paid to overcome them. Second, what reforms did the Song implement to change its impoverished and weak state? And how did these reforms impact the Song dynasty's fate? Third, the worsening ethnic crisis profoundly influenced Song thought and culture, spreading Confucianism to grassroots levels until embraced nationwide. All right, let's begin with part 1, the challenges the Song dynasty faced and the price paid to overcome them. In 960 AD, Zhao Kuangyin launched the Chenjiao Mutiny, forcing Emperor Gom of later Zhou to abdicate. He then ascended the throne, founding the Song dynasty, beginning its 319-year saga. Despite this smooth founding, the new Song dynasty faced a massive challenge.
Mishandling could cause collapse. The emperor hadn't fully secured military control, a fatal threat for any feudal dynasty.
And this threat was a historical legacy. After the Lushan Rebellion, Tang dynasty's regional control collapsed, creating warlord separatist regimes. Ultimately, the Tang fell to these warlords, plunging China into 70 years of fragmentation. Warlords established over 10 regimes during this period, collectively called the 5 Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms. These regimes shared one trait. Founders were mostly generals who used armies to overthrow former masters. Within years, their own generals copied this tactic, making these short-lived dynasties where military control meant political power. Zhao Kuanyin's story exemplifies this, a military man who earned glory for later Zhou becoming supreme commander of the imperial guard.
He used this position to control the imperial guard, gaining generals' unanimous support to be draped in yellow robes, the symbolic act of becoming emperor.
After ascending, Zhao's greatest fear was history repeating. To prevent this, he established two policies. First, direct imperial control of the military. In summer 961, Zhao hosted a banquet for imperial guard generals. Amid drinks, he hinted, "You supported my rise, but what if you support another?" The generals immediately understood, surrendering their military authority to retire peacefully, known as relieving military power with a cup of wine. Thus, Song emperors achieved direct military control. Next, Emperor Taizu of Song established the second national policy, prioritizing civil officials over military ones, elevating their status above generals. So, in the Song Dynasty, civil officials had boundless career prospects, while military generals struggled to get ahead. Yi Qing, a general under Emperor Renzong, was brave and skilled in battle, rising to become chief military commissioner, equivalent to Minister of Defense, which broke a major taboo. Because the policy required civil officials to oversee military ones, and the commissioner position had always been held by civil officials, leaders like Ouyang Shi and Wen Yunbo repeatedly petitioned Emperor Renzong to remove Yi Qing. Reluctantly, the emperor dismissed him. Devastated, Yi Qing soon died. Yue Fei, the famous general who resisted the Jin, suffered even worse. He clearly commanded a large army, but upon receiving Emperor Gaozong's 12 golden edicts, he obediently surrendered his forces. Even after Yue Fei was wrongfully executed, his troops didn't rebel, showing military generals were utterly submissive throughout the Song era. It seemed Zhao Kuanyan's two policies helped the Song escape its predicament, but they came with side effects. The worsening fiscal crisis was linked to them. So I take the emperor's absolute military control. It led to the emperor personally commanding ever larger armies. Emperor Taizu commanded 380,000 imperial guards. Taizong had 660,000, Zhenzong over 900,000, and by Renzong's time it approached 1.26 million. The Ming Dynasty novel Water Margin depicts Lin Chong as an instructor for 800,000 imperial guards, not made up, since the Song's imperial guards, the regular army, were indeed massive, consuming staggering resources. A huge chunk of the Song dynasty's fiscal revenue went toward military spending. Under Emperor Shenzong, military expenses even took up 80% of the fiscal budget. This was a scenario typical of modern nations at war. In ancient times, it was virtually unique. The civil over military policy also burdened finances heavily. The Song treated civil officials extremely well. Scholars entering the scholar official class via imperial exams saw living standards soar. Even a small county magistrate, like a deputy county head, could earn 12,000 cash monthly, while in the Tang dynasty, the same rank got less than half that. Higher officials' incomes were even more substantial. Hu Zun passed the imperial exams at 19, was deeply favored by Emperor Zhenzong, and rose to become prime minister. He not only had a high salary, but also frequent rewards, enabling a lavish lifestyle. Here's a small example. Ordinary families used oil lamps at night, but Kujun's household only used candles. At dusk, he'd order candles lit, illuminating rooms like daylight. Convenient. He partied all night with guests. With such generous perks for officials, no wonder scholars were eager to serve. But positions were limited. By mid-Northern Song, redundant bureaucracy, too many officials, had become a major headache for the court. The Song's institutional design worsened this bureaucratic bloat. The central government comprised the Secretariat, Chancellery, and Department of State Affairs, collectively called the three departments. The Secretariat issued decrees, while the Chancellery reviewed them.
Unreasonable proposals were rejected. Reasonable ones went to the Department of State Affairs for archiving, then executed by its 6 ministries. Sounded efficient, but reality differed.
The Secretariat became just a mouthpiece for imperial edicts. Chancellery reviews were formalities who dared reject the emperor's orders. The Department of State Affairs saw its powers carved up by the 6 ministries, reduced to mere document filing. Worse, Emperor Tao's original plan confined the 3 departments to handling only administration, military, and finance, but other agencies took over. Strictly speaking, the 3 departments were secretariats. But why did the emperor need 3? Actually, Emperor Taizu used this to pit officials against each other, ensuring imperial control. Ultimately, it was all about centralizing power. The goal was achieved, but the new agencies worsened bureaucratic bloat and strained finances. Later generations blamed Song's impoverished and weak state here, not lack of funds, but military and bureaucracy draining the treasury dry. Visionaries recognized this early and launched reforms, which brings us to part 2, overcoming weakness. What reforms did the Song implement? How did these reforms impact the dynasty's fate? In 1043, Chancellor Fan Zhangyan petitioned Emperor Renzong to streamline bureaucracy, cut military costs, and reduce peasant burdens. Officials like Han Qi and Ouyang Shu supported him. Emperor Renzong approved, launching the Qing-Li reforms, which worked initially but faced fierce backlash from vested interests. Within a year, reformers like Fan and Ouyang were exiled from the capital, ending the Qing-Li reforms. And over 20 years later, a bolder, longer, more radical reform erupted: Wang Anxi's new policies. In 1069, Emperor Shenzong appointed Wang Anxi as vice-chancellor to lead the reforms. Wang Anxi's reforms covered politics, economy, military, and more. Though complex, their core goal was enriching the nation and strengthening its military. And
to achieve this, Wang Anxi focused on 2 approaches: cutting government spending and increasing fiscal revenue.
first, let's discuss spending cuts.
Take the Baojia system. It organized rural households into units. 10 households as a bao, 5 baos as a great bao, 10 great baos as a du bao.
Families with 2 or more adult males had to provide one as a Baoding militia member. And these Baoding farmed during peacetime, trained during agricultural off-seasons, and served during wars. Calculations showed the court spent just 1/5 on Baoding compared to regular troops. Rong hoped the Baojia system would let him downsize the regular army, reducing military expenses, easing fiscal pressure. Plus, training peasants could fix the Song army's weakness, achieving the strong military goal. Long even promised Emperor Shenzong that after years of training, Baoding would outperform regular troops. Now, about increasing revenue, there were numerous methods. Take the green sprouts loan. During famines, farmers borrowed from landlords at up to 70% interest, often losing their land when unable to repay. The Green Sprouts Law let the government lend to farmers twice yearly at just 20% interest. This avoided usury while generating state revenue. Win-win. Then the Exempted Service Law. Previously, farmers did mandatory corvée labor, unpaid work for officials. The new law abolished corvée, requiring local governments to hire workers using exemption fees. Local households shared this fee, with wealthier families paying more. This eased peasants' burdens, freeing time for farming, which boosted tax revenue. Meanwhile, wealthy households bore most costs, effectively funding the government. Wang also established state monopolies on salt, tea, and alcohol, while imposing consumption taxes on goods like meat, fruit, and firewood. According to Song Dynasty records, after the reforms, local taxes paid to the central government doubled, business taxes tripled, completely reversing the financial crisis. Wang Anxi established government granaries, storing massive wealth like grain and money, ready for use in disasters or wars. You could say the reforms succeeded, but at the cost of immense suffering for the people, and soon after, various flaws surfaced. Take the Green Sprouts loan. It was meant to solve farmers' money troubles, but in practice, local governments often forced loans on them to collect interest, leading many farmers to bankruptcy and sparking public outrage. Conservative factions led by Sima Guang argued that the green sprouts loan was essentially a hidden tax, adding to the people's burden. Well, loans were rare amount.
Conservatives also slammed the monopolies on salt, tea, and alcohol, claiming that after monopolies were set up, prices shot up, people paid more, and the cash went straight to the government, basically competing with the people for profit.
With Emperor Shenzong's death in 1085, conservatives gained power, and the reforms came to a full stop. However, Emperor Shenzong's successor reinstated the reformists and brought back many measures. Why were emperors so keen on reforms? The reason's simple. Reforms effectively boosted fiscal revenue, and that temptation was huge. Emperor Huizong's actions really drive this home. Emperor Huizong is considered one of the biggest spenders in Chinese history. During his 26-year reign, he actively sponsored arts events, hosted all kinds of celebrations, and splurged on building palaces and gardens. The royal garden he built, Yue, covered 500,000 square meters, packed with pavilions and towers, costing a fortune. Emperor Huizong also fought a 5-year war with Western Xia, forcing them to submit, all of which cost big bucks. So Emperor Huizong heavily relied on Caijing, ordering him to amass vast wealth. Caijing was a jinshi during Emperor Shenzong's time, recommended by Wan Anshi, and became part of the reform faction. After Emperor Huizong took personal rule, Caijing's career soared, rising to the position once held by Wang Anshi, chancellor. If Wang Anshi's reforms opened the door for the government to rake in wealth, then Caijing took it to the max, turning the Song government into a money-sucking machine. Under the reform banner, he cooked up excuses to squeeze wealth. When Emperor Huizong wanted a birthday bash, Caijing invented the Sheng Chen Gong, making local officials contribute gifts. Emperor Huizong loved stones, so Caijing created the Huaxigang, collecting rare rocks from Jiangnan. Records show that to haul a huge Taihu Lake stone to Bianliang, local officials spent 80 million strings of copper coins, equal to 200 years of income for a middle-class family in the northern Song. Caijing also started eyeing paper money. Song Dynasty paper money originated in Sichuan, where iron coins were used. Costly to mint, heavy, and inconvenient to carry. As the commodity economy grew, people craved a lighter currency. Jiaozi emerged. Merchants deposited money with jiaozi shops, receiving equivalent jiaozi notes in return. Merchants used jiaozi for trade. Recipients could either reuse it or redeem it for iron coins at shops. Essentially, jiaozi was a credit instrument backed by iron coins, instantly redeemable. With jiaozi, merchants avoided hauling heavy iron coins for large transactions.
Soon, jiaozi spread widely across Sichuan as a key payment method.
Initially a private initiative, the court monopolized jiaozi issuance in 1023 under Emperor Renzong. This was the world's first government-issued paper money, predating the West by 600 to 700 years. Initially pragmatic, the court maintained reserves and strict issuance limits to prevent inflation. But under Caijing's rule, caution vanished. When Emperor Huizong attacked Western Xia, Pai printed over 24 million strings of jiaozi for military funds.
This was 20 times Emperor Renzong's issuance, causing hyperinflation, massive devaluation, and loss of trust.
People rejected it. Seeing this, Caijing scrapped jiaozi and launched new paper currency. Yin was just old wine in new bottles, actually worse. Without reserve requirements or issuance limits, Yin enabled even wilder printing than jiaozi. You might ask, couldn't people just refuse it? Wishful thinking. Financial rules forced merchants to accept qianyin for all government purchases. And this qianyin couldn't be redeemed for coins. You could only watch helplessly as your qianyin turned to worthless paper. When Caijing's agents scoured Jiangnan for rare stones, they paid with qianyin, funded by ordinary families' blood and tears. On the eve of the Jin conquest, qianyin issuance hit 70 million strings, amassing vast wealth for Emperor Huizong. In 1127, Jin troops sacked Bianliang, capturing Emperors Huizong and Qinzong.
They looted imperial treasures and art, filling 1,000 plus carts, then raided the treasury, seizing 3 million gold ingots, 8 million silver ingots, 1.5 million silk bolts, and 54 million plain silk bolts.
You could say, from Long Enchi's reforms to Kai Jing's financial tricks, the court got filthy rich, achieving the goal of national wealth. Ironically, against the powerful Jin army, the northern Song was still impoverished and weak, collapsing at the first blow.
And the southern Song regime, founded by Zhao Gu, Emperor Huizong's ninth son, kept walking the same old path of inflating paper money to boost government revenue.
Plainly put, the modern state traits in Song's finances were driven by the government's insatiable greed for wealth. That wraps up part 2. Now we move to part 3. The worsening ethnic crisis deeply shaped Song thought and culture, spreading Confucianism to grassroots levels until embraced nationwide. Among ancient Chinese dynasties, the Song had one of the strongest senses of ethnic identity. This stemmed from external pressures, dealing with the Tangut-founded Western Xia in the northwest, fighting for over 70 years from Emperor Renzong to Huizong before forcing Xia to submit at huge cost. To the north, they battled the Liao for 20-plus years, then signed the Treaty of Chanyuan for a century of peace, but the rise of Jin shattered this. Jin destroyed Liao, then northern Song, seizing all of Hebei. The southern Song could only defend along the Huai River and the Sangguan line, under constant Jin pressure, and even this fragile peace didn't last. By 1234, the Mongols wiped out Jin and attacked southern Song right after. After 45 years of struggle, Song fell in the 1279 Battle of Yashan, ending the dynasty. Looking across the Song's 319 years, Song people constantly faced intense pressure from foreign regimes, causing a fundamental shift in their attitude toward outsiders.
This becomes crystal clear when compared to the Tang Dynasty.
Tang people had an open attitude toward foreigners. Tang emperors loved using minority generals to encourage foreign exchanges. Chang'an, Luoyang, and Yangzhou were international hubs packed with foreign envoys and merchants.
The Song was different. To Song folks, the Khitans and Jurchens were outsiders, enemies, to guard against fiercely. How could they be so inclusive?
So, Song restrictions on foreign merchants were way stricter than in Tang. Seems like foreign merchants thronging streets or foreign dancers in taverns weren't seen in northern Song's capital, Bianliang.
The Song also imposed cultural and information blockades on foreigners, banning subjects from taking books abroad except Confucian classics, especially writings on domestic or foreign affairs, to stop outsiders from learning Song's secrets.
The Song people's fixation on borders. This was rare in ancient China. Han and Tang were vast empires with blurry border concepts.
But for Song folks, Liao and Jin were real threats. Breaching borders meant imminent war. Thus, Song people were hypersensitive to boundary changes. Established boundary markers couldn't be moved. Not an inch of land could be taken.
Despite strict defenses, Song rulers faced an awkward truth. Foreign regimes like Liao, Western Shao, Jin, and Wan all claimed imperial titles, putting them on equal footing with Song emperors. The Treaty of Chanyuan established Song and Liao as brotherly states with equal status. The Shaoxiaoing Agreement required southern Song to submit as vassals to Jin. After failed northern campaigns, southern Song was forced into the Longxing Agreement as punishment. Southern Song emperors even had to address Jin emperors as uncle, a generational inferiority. This clashed with some rulers' belief in China's celestial supremacy, yet they couldn't deny it. How to handle this de facto equality? Now, fortunately, scholars found justification in Confucianism. The Huayi distinction, proposed by Confucius and elaborated in classics like Spring and Autumn Annals and Book of Rites. Its core meaning, the distinction between Hua, Chinese, and Yi, barbarians, lies in embracing Chinese civilization. Those embracing it were Hua, those rejecting it were Yi. Thus,
Song inherited superior civilization.
Song was advanced and cultured, while Liao, Jin, and Western Xia were backward and barbaric. Great scholars like Oyan Xiu, Sima Guang, Cheng brothers, and Zhu Xi amplified this narrative. They argued the court must prevent barbarian ideas and customs from invading the Central Plains and corrupting Chinese civilization. As a Southern Song scholar, Zhu Xi felt this especially acutely. He lamented,
Even Song clothing shows barbarian influence. Even the emperor's dragon robes aren't authentic anymore.
if this continued, he warned, Chinese civilization would perish. Zhu Xi's barbarians included not just Khitans and Jurchens, but foreign religions like Zoroastrianism and Manichaeism. Unlike Tong's openness, the Song suppressed Zoroastrianism and Manichaeism into extinction. Buddhism wasn't spared either. Zhu Xi condemned Buddhism as escapist and corrupting, but banning it was unrealistic given its sophisticated doctrines and deep cynicization. From nobles to commoners, Buddhism had many followers. Since outright opposition failed, scholars like the Cheng brothers and Zhu Xi shifted strategy, systematizing Confucian doctrine to counter Buddhism. Buddhism claims reality is emptiness. All things are illusions. Life is void. Zhu Xi countered that all things form through qi, governed by Li, controlling qi's flow.
So what is this lie?
Zhu Xi declared at the essence of Confucian teaching: benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom. Ultimately, the world operates through these principles. People should preserve heavenly principle, eliminate human desires by restraining selfish urges. Live by benevolence, righteousness, propriety, and wisdom to achieve harmony between heaven and humanity. So how could life be void, as Buddhism claims? Because they used Li against Buddhism's emptiness. Zhu Xi and others were called Li scholars or Dao Li philosophers. According to Zhu Xi, this philosophical system began with Yawen Shun, was advanced by Confucius and Mencius, passed through Tang scholar Han Yu to the Cheng brothers and Zhu Xi, spanning millennia and destined to endure. Yet Zhu Xi wasn't appreciated in his lifetime. Only posthumously in 1227 was he honored as Duke of Xin and enshrined in Confucius Temple. This meant placing his memorial tablet in Confucius Temple for state-sponsored veneration alongside Confucius,
Signifying official recognition of his status as a great scholar.
After Zhu Xi, Neo-Confucians like the Cheng brothers, Zhou Dunyi, and Zhang Zai also received temple enshrinement, making Neo-Confucianism integral to state ideology. Meanwhile, Zhu Xi's edited 4 books and 5 classics became mandatory imperial exam texts, dominating exams for 600-plus years. Exam questions mainly drew from these texts. Including Neo-Confucianism in exams profoundly shaped Chinese thought. Recall, Emperor Wu of Han dismissed 100 schools, revered Confucianism alone, establishing it as state ideology. But this targeted the elite. Confucianism's grassroots influence remained limited, because from Han to Tang, mid-high officials came from aristocratic families. Commoners rarely entered government, so learning Confucian statecraft was unnecessary. The Song differed. By Northern Song, exam graduates comprised 40% of officials. By late Southern Song, about 70% of Jinshi came from families without officials for 3 generations. Song officials were largely commoner-born, creating the impression that mastering the 4 books and 5 classics offered a path to success through imperial exams. This fostered widespread study of Confucian classics, gradually permeating all social levels until embraced nationwide. Thus, Confucianism truly ruled Chinese minds during the Song, especially Southern Song, explaining the book's title, The Age of Confucian Rule. Of course, this wasn't pure Confucianism, but Neo-Confucianism reshaped by Zhu Xi and others. All right, that concludes part 3. Finally, how should we view this unique dynasty? The author argues militarily and diplomatically. Song was indeed weak. Distinctive Song traits, overly complex institutions, fiscal desperation, strong ethnic consciousness, weren't inherited by Yuan, Ming, or Qing dynasties. Song's legacy was primarily spiritual. Generous patronage enabled scholar officials' monumental achievements in literature and arts.
Songshi poetry became household literary treasures. Songshi poetry forged new paths beyond Tang's heights.
Song paintings, porcelain, and architecture remain treasures of Chinese civilization. As for Neo-Confucianism shaping Chinese thought, its influence endures 600 plus years later. Finally, historian Chen Yinkei's evaluation captures Song's historical significance. Chinese culture, through millennia of evolution, peaked during the Zhao Song period. That concludes Harvard History of China, Volume 4, The Age of Confucian Rule, Song's Transformation. Reading notes are below the audio. See you tomorrow.